Hey programmers, what is going on? Today on this episode, I'm going to show you how to set up a build and deploy from GitHub to Azure and go from times like this to this. Way better. I'm the Savage Coder, and welcome to episode 33. You know, there's a few people who have been sticking with this channel for a long time, and one of them, his name is Fright1. I want to thank you for all of your feedback along the way, and Fright1 says, I want Azure, so that's what we're going to do in this episode. We're going to take what we left off with in episode 32, and we're going to set up some CI/CD that will build and deploy that website to Azure. But first, okay, so the code that we are starting off with is on the GitHub Noble Cause Code /React base, and that link is in the description. And we have some branches in there, so you can pull episode 32 right from that branch. I'm going to leave the merged branches also on their own, so you can just pull by branch. We have our code here. Remember, if you pull from GitHub, you have to do an npm install. I've already done that, so you don't have to sit here and watch that. But let's just hit npm start and see what our site looks like. So not very pretty. We haven't styled any of these things up. I do want to get into some different stylings with maybe Tailwind and some MUI just to make this look a little better. But we have our hello world, and we have our text box where we can type in what we want. And we have a child component that is rendering that we're passing the value to, and the child component is sending it back with the value that is sent to it. All right, so we want to push this up to Azure. So there's a bunch of different ways to get your code from your desktop onto another host. So I can only show you so many ways. If there's something you want to see that I haven't covered, feel free to leave a comment in the video or hit me up on social media and I'll see what I can do. So for now, we're going to use GitHub, and we're going to use GitHub Actions to deploy to an Azure web app. So first thing we want to do is we want to set up set up an Azure website.
Well, it's about time.
Websites in Azure are generally hosted in a web app. So if you don't have an Azure account, you can go sign up for a free one. And the nice thing about it is, even after your free benefits have ended, if you use certain small sizes of things in Azure, they remain free forever. So I'm going to show you how that works right now. So I'm already logged in here in my Azure portal, portal.azure.com. Let me make things a little bigger here so we can see. And what I'm going to do is I am going to create a resource. You can also go in this menu here to create a resource, or certain things are here on the left, like app services. So I'm going to go ahead and just use this one, but anyone is fine. Now, if you search for a website, there's really not a lot of help here. Azure calls that a web app. So it's here. If you don't see it there, you can always search for web app. And you don't want the one with a database. So if you search, web app will come up, even though it's not in that drop down. You can also tell by this icon, which is the icon for a web app. So I'm going to click create here, or just to show you, we could do it quickly by create a resource, web app, and go right to create here. Okay, let's set up our web app. So you'll have to choose your subscription, which could say pay as you go, or it might be your free one. Choose whatever subscription you have. And we're going to create a new resource group for this. I'm going to call mine Noble Cause Code RG for resource group. And a resource group is just kind of a logical grouping of Azure resources like websites and Key Vault and databases, and you can kind of keep them all together in a resource group. Or you could make a resource group for dev and one for QA, one for stage, one for production. It's a really handy way of organizing things. Next, we have to give our app a name. This name is unique across all of Azure because our site's going to be called whatever name we type here, .azurewebsites.net. So if I just type test, test has already been taken by someone somewhere, probably a long time ago. I'm going to choose something that other people have not chosen. We'll call it Noble Cause Code-React. If I can type. As long as you see the green check, you are good to go. We are not Dockerizing. We are going to deploy code. And in this dropdown, I already have selected Node 16 LTS. There is no actual operating system here for React. If we were doing our MVC stuff here, we would choose .NET 6. But the closest we can get is Node, which is kind of a server-side environment that runs JavaScript, and so we can use the Node environment to build our project and to deploy it. Next, we have to choose our operating system, Linux or Windows. I'm going to go ahead and choose Windows. You can choose Linux if you like, but there will be a change later in the build where you have to choose your image. So you'll have to make that change then. This is free right now, and typically the Windows and Linux are very competitive price-wise. They're usually about the same price. Now, if you go to AWS or GCP, Linux might be cheaper than Windows because of licensing. The next thing is the region. Choose somewhere that is close to you so your site is nice and fast for you. I am going to choose East US because that's near where I am. The next thing is a plan. The plan has to do with how powerful the website server is. This is a serverless application. We don't have to maintain the server, but there's still CPU and RAM and that stuff behind it. So the more powerful you choose, the more it costs. We want to stick to the free tier in this example. So I'm going to create a new plan, and I'm going to call it Noble Cause Code Plan. And in that plan, we have to be careful because when you create a new plan, notice it defaulted to a standard S1, which is not free. So let's change the size, and we'll choose Dev Test, and we'll choose the F1 free tier. It says free right there. When we hit apply, make sure it says free F1 right here so that we don't get charged for it. On the next step, we get to the deployment page, and this is where we can hook up our GitHub actions. If we look back on GitHub, there's a tab here in our repo called Actions. And in here, we can hook up build systems and deployment systems and continuous integration. You can see here is one that will deploy Node.js to Azure Web App, which is exactly what we're doing. And we'll have to make some small changes to this because we're actually deploying a React app, not a Node.js app. So we have some tiny changes to make, but it'll get us 90% there. So I could do that here by clicking configure, but since Azure lets us do it from this side while we're creating things, it just seems like it makes sense to me. So I'm going to hit enable. And the next thing we have to do is we have to authorize it against the GitHub account. So I'm going to click this authorize button. And what it's saying is Azure App Services creates by Azure App Service wants access to your Noble Cause Code account. It wants to read the repository and it wants to mess around with the workflow. So I'm going to authorize this app from Microsoft through to GitHub. So now that it's attached to my GitHub account, I can go through organization, Noble Cause Code. All of this is pulling from GitHub. I can find my repository called React Base in there, and the branch is going to be master. I can see my other branches in there, but I want anytime I put a change in master, I want to build and deploy to this create web app website. So you can preview this file if you want to, and this produces a YAML file. And YAML is kind of like a JSON file without curly braces. It uses white space and tabs here instead of curly braces. So it's still hierarchical in that push belongs to on, branches belong to push, master belongs to branches. And then, you know, just like jobs has builds and builds has a run on and steps are siblings of build. So they're both children of build. And so that's how you kind of organize these YAML files. So we'll go through what it does in a moment, but for now, we're good. That's just a preview anyway. Next, monitoring. We're not going to put any monitoring on because of, well, A, this is a simple site, and B, I don't want to get charged for application insights. The other things you can do here are tags. It's not a bad idea to come up with a name for your application. And that way, when you add a new piece to your application, you can share the same tag. So what I mean here is if I say name is Noble Cause React Project, right? So now if I add a database to this, or if I add a key vault to it, I can, when creating the key vault, I can give it the name Noble Cause React Project, and that way I can search and filter by name Noble Cause React Project and list all of the components that make that project up. You don't have to do this. It's just a way to organize it for later. Next thing, we'll let it review, and it says, okay, everything is good to go. Otherwise, there would be an error banner up here. And so I'm just going to click Create, and that will submit a deployment. That deployment is in progress, and all right, so we're done here. We can go to the resource here, or as you saw, there was a little message up here. You can get to those messages under this bell. It also will allow you to go to resource, or you can pin this to your Azure dashboard. So I'm just going to click Go to Resource. If you need to get back to this at any point from home, you can go to All Resources, and it'll be in this list. So if you want, you can go under Type, and you can say, oh, show me just the app services, and apply that filter. Make sure your resource group is set to all. That way you'll be sure you'll see it. So here's my Noble Cause Code React web app. So I can just click on that and I'm back here. So if we go into the deployment center, we will see that we are connected from GitHub. And if we ever wanted to disconnect that, we could just click disconnect. That's how we can manage the settings and the connectivity there. You have logs here that will tell you when builds deploy. You can see there's one in progress now. And so if we click that, it takes us actually back to GitHub. So in our repo, if we're just here, right, and you want to see what's going on, are there any builds happening, what's happening, you can go to your actions. And now notice there's this build and deploy Node.js app. That's what we just created. So if I click on that, you can see there's one in progress here. It was kicked off 2 minutes ago. It says it's in progress. Hopefully that's kind of big enough. That's a little too big. So we have our in progress here, and this is just kind of the initial. Okay, so as I said in the beginning of this video, this is going to take an enormous amount of time. And I'm going to click on this build and drill in, and we'll see why it's taking so long. So while this is working, let's take a look at this script, and we'll see why it's going to take so long to do this step. Notice we're only at 9%, 10%, 11%. You see how long it took to go from 10 to 11, and what we can do about that to make it take hardly any time at all. So to do that, I'm going to click on the ellipses here and view the workflow file. let's take a look at what it's doing and see if we can tell how we can make it better. So in this YAML file, this was all generated for us by Azure. And actually, it just pulled it from these GitHub actions that I showed you in GitHub earlier. So it's just saying go to master. This is going to run on a Windows latest image. And the first step is a checkout. So it's going to pull the code from master. After it pulls the code, it's going to install Node.js version 16, whatever the latest version there is. After Node.js is installed, you already have npm, right? That comes with Node. So now we can run npm install, which will pull all of our packages in our React project and put them in the node_modules directory. Then we run an npm run build. And npm run build, we make that bigger. npm run build will make a production build of the React project. And then after it's done building, it will run any tests. And as long as the tests pass, which ours will, then we're in good shape and can go on to the next step. If the tests don't pass, it'll fail at that step, which is a pretty good thing to leave in there. So the next thing that it does is it uploads the artifact. And the path here is the key. It's saying dot, which means everything here. If we look at our app and I do npm run build, right? That will build our production app. If we look in package.json, I'm just running this build script, and that will create a production build in the build directory. Okay, and it's done. So we have this build directory here, and you can see inside static.js all of the chunks. The problem with this is that it's not just looking in the build folder. It doesn't say go to the build folder. It says, hey, right here where I am, the same place where I ran npm run build, go ahead and upload everything in the current directory. Well, look where I am when I ran npm run build. I'm in my React base directory, which has all this stuff in it. And one of the things in this directory is this huge node modules directory with all these things. So even though I don't need any of these, all of them are getting copied and built and sent over to the server for deployment. So you can see why this step right here is going to kill the whole thing. And even if we went back right now, you can see build is still spinning. Even if we go back in there and look at it now, we were at 10% before. Let's wait for the next update. It's been going for 8 minutes already. And you can see we're only at 28%. This is ridiculous. So not a good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cancel this workflow because I don't want it to build. So it says that I've successfully requested a cancel. So if all goes well, there we go. If we go back to our actions now, you can see it ran for 10 minutes, but it was canceled. It did not pass. It didn't even make it through the whole build step. All right, so let's go here and view our workflow file. And then what I'm going to do is hit this pen so that I can edit this file. So let's go ahead and fix some things here. So there's a couple things we can do. One thing we can do is we can zip up the result of our build and then upload just the zip file. We won't have to upload every file under the node modules or the other files we don't need. So I'm going to go in between, right after we do this run test, I want to go in here and I want to basically zip the build directory. if you're on Linux, you would change this Windows latest to, you could use this Ubuntu latest. And that would be the difference on, just make sure that if you change that you were targeting Linux in Azure in the first place. Don't just arbitrarily change that. So we need to find a zip utility. The reason I went back to this Windows runs on is because if you do have Linux, there is a zip command that you can just run kind of like this here. But we don't have the ability to do that. So I can go to this marketplace and I can search for zip. And I think the one that I want to use is the one with the most stars. So it looks like 73 stars here. I'm going with the Dr. Zero. So let's make sure our cursor is by itself on a line. And I'm just going to click this zip release. And I'm going to copy the installation, which is just this stuff in here. And I'm just going to paste it here. Now, when I pasted, it messed up the YAML, right? It messed up all the white space. So I have to bring the uses in line with the name here. So I'm just going to select all this to here because I didn't mess with this upload artifact. I just added this section. And I'm just going to hit tab a couple times, 3 times until uses lines up with name. I think we're good there. All right, so I'm going to get rid of these comments here. And so the file name for archive is the file name. So let's just make that what it says there. Release.zip sounds good to me for a file name. So as long as I get rid of that hashtag there, it's no longer a comment. So release.zip, that sounds good. The path, so you see the default is dot. Well, that's the whole problem we came up with in the first place. So I want my path to be ./build/star. Right, so go from the directory we're in into the build directory and then everything inside build. All right, I'm going to get rid of this base path comment. The directory that we want to use is, it says the default is dot, which is fine with me. You can start in the current directory as long as you use that path. And then I don't have any exclusions. I want everything to be zipped in build. And it says the default type is zip, which is what I want, so I can get rid of that too. So really all we need, once this value cannot be null disappears, all we really need here is we're going to zip up the release using the Dr. zip release. The file name will be release zip, and the path will be from here into the build directory, and then every file. So now we have to upload the artifact, but we don't want to upload everything, right? We want to upload release.zip. And release.zip will be in the current directory, so you don't even need to do anything for the path. You could just put release.zip, and it will find it. And I think that should do everything. Yep, that looks good. So now what we have to do is we can preview our changes if we want to. And it's just showing that we added this green and we changed this line from this to release.zip. So it looks good. I'm going to go ahead and start a commit. And I'm just going to put updated CI/CD script. And we're going to commit this directly to the master branch. Normally, I would create a new branch and open a pull request, but no reason when it's just going to be me reviewing it anyway. So for now, I'm just going to commit directly to master. Well, remember the rules that we had was anytime anything gets committed to master, it fires off an action. So it's already kicked off in progress, just kicked off now, this build. So let's go in and take a look at it. So it's installing Node version 16, then it's running npm install, then npm run build, and then npm run test. You won't see all the output from npm install, but you will see some of these warnings and things pop up. So we know that right now it's running npm install. We're running the React scripts test. We see all of our tests pass. There's only one. You see how fast it went through this entry point, creating our zip archive. Everything's successful. It uploaded. So the archive is in an uploaded place where the deployment can grab it. And now it's just running some post actions on the checkout. So if we go back, you can see build is now a check mark. If we go back to the whole top level, you can see build is done and now deploy is done. It was that quick. So if we want to look up at the deployment, it sets up the job, downloads the artifact in the zip file, and it deploys that zip file right to our Noble Cause Code React site in our app service, and the job is completed. So we can either evaluate it by clicking this link here, noblecausecode-react.azurewebsites.net, or back in our Azure app service, we can click this overview tab, and the link for the URL is here. So if I click that, you do not have permission to view this directory or page. Something went wrong. Okay, so let's take a look at what went wrong and look how we can fix it. I am going to go down on the left here, and I'm going to go to Advanced Tools under Development Tools on the left. And I'm going to click this Go link for the Advanced Tools, and this will open up my Kudu tools. Okie doke. So I'm going to look at my debug console. And if I drill down into site and then www.root, there's the problem. So I must have missed something in the deployment because the zip file is here and it should be unzipped and the actual file should be there. So while I could at this command prompt probably unzip that file and show you that it works, I want this whole process to work. So I'm just going to delete the release.zip here. So it's not even there anymore. And I'm going to close these tools, and I'm going to go back to my workflow file. I'm going to hit edit and see what went wrong. So we created our zip release with the doctor here, and all that seems to work. So we got our release zip uploaded, and we even got it deployed. So let's go down to where it actually copies stuff over. Oh, yeah, I have to tell it the package is release.zip so that it knows it's a zip file. I think once it sees zip, it knows to unzip it. Let's go ahead and start that commit again. And I'm going to say updated CI CD script zip deploy fix, just so I know what I did later. We'll commit that, go back to actions, and you can see we're already queued. So let's see what that does. See, the package is deploying using a zip deploy, so it should know. All right, and it says it is completed. So if we go back here to our overview tab, let's try clicking the link here. And there is our app. And it works. So we've just deployed our code CI/CD from our desktop through to Azure. And this is now all hooked up. So let's see how this works. I have a branch here called episode 33. So in my branch, you can see my branch that I'm in is episode 33. In here, I am going to go into my app.tsx, and I'm going to put a class inside class name equals, and we're just going to call it, app style. And because we are importing our app CSS, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say app style and background color, and we'll make it something like what was the old cornflower blue was the old video game color. So why did that not pick up? Why is that? Okay. I don't know what was wrong there, but I'm going to do a cornflower blue.
Ew.
That is really ugly. So that's perfect. I love the ugly. Yeah. So let's say this was our change that we wanted to make, and we now want to push that up to our Azure site, which is at noblecause-code-react.azurewebsites.net. Right? Here's my local one. So this is the change. It's good. And, well, I don't know if it's good. It's very ugly, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to commit my change, which is my CSS change and my app.tsx change. I'm going to say change to ugly color.
Ew.
And I'm going to push this episode 33 branch up to GitHub. All right. This will not cause anything to be built. You can see there's nothing new in here. Because if we go into the code, we can see that there's just a branch. You see it says episode 33 had recent pushes, and there's a branch called episode 33 with changes, and it's asking me all over, do I want to create a pull request, which I do. So I'm going to create a pull request. This was just an example to show off CI/CD features. And so I'll create my pull request. I can look at the files changed and I can see what I did. I can comment on this if I'm working on this with others. I can review the changes and write comments and all that fun stuff. Once everything is good and I'm happy, then I can merge this pull request. And so I am going to confirm the merge. I'm not going to delete the branch because I want to leave that for everybody with 33. But now that I merged it, I merged into master. And once I merged into master, that automatically kicked off this job. So I don't have to do anything but write code and interact with Git, and my Azure website here will update once that build is finished. Let's clean up some of these. So let's go back to actions. It's running. And we can look at it. I'm just going to look at it from here. And if we want to know, well, how long is it going to take, we can look at one that was successful. It looks like it took about 1.5 minutes to build and 11 seconds to deploy. So we can probably expect about the same here. Okay, that one took 1 minute and 49 seconds. We're waiting for the deploy. There it goes. Should take around 11 seconds, I'm guessing. It's a pretty small site with a small change. And there we go. I can now go to Azure site and refresh the page. And there it is. It's live. So the other things that you can do with this are you can come up with a branching strategy. So let's say you had a couple of different app services, and one of them was going to be for people to test while you're developing. You want to give them a version they can run through and test it, maybe look at features, see what's missing, tell you about things that are broken. So you can set up another app service, and you can just set up a branch in GitHub. Like if I go back to master and I get the latest here, I can create a branch called QA. And I can push that empty branch up to GitHub. So now when I want to put certain code on QA, maybe right now it's master, but maybe I'm working on some features and I can put whatever I want. I can go to QA and I can create another branch off of QA, or I can merge things to the QA branch. And I can set up CI/CD instead of on the master branch like we did. I could have it target anything that is inside the QA branch. And so we could deploy certain versions of our code to a QA environment while we continue to build in the dev environment, and those dev changes could go somewhere else. And you can do the same thing with a production environment, and you can really get creative with this so that things are always building and things are always deploying, and there's always a live version of the latest, greatest stuff, or the next version that's going to go out is somewhere. And so that becomes very powerful. So that's it for this episode. We covered how to create a CI/CD pipeline that builds and deploys, grabs your code from whatever branch you want on GitHub, and sends it off into the cloud in Azure. This is very similarly done if you wanted to do this in either Google Cloud or to AWS. Hopefully you found that cool. I know I did. I thought it was a lot of fun. So if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments or reach out to me on social media. If you found this helpful and you enjoyed it, please subscribe. Pretty please. And let me know what else you want to learn. I will continue putting as many of these cool videos out as I can. As always, practice, 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 and I'll see you soon online.